Lots of people talk about chasing their dreams, but how many actually do it? Welcome to the Pursue Your Passion podcast with Tyler Kammerman. We're going to introduce you to people who are intentionally pursuing their passion every day. Through their stories of success and their struggles, you'll gain insight into how to better begin or continue your journey. Now here's Tyler with today's guest.
Hey, all you passion pursuers, welcome back to the show. This is Tyler Kammerman, your host as always. I am here today with Zach Kowalik. I'm super excited to be here with him. He is a referral from a listener, which I am also excited about and want to encourage all of you out there. If you've got somebody in your life or just on the outskirts that you know that you think would be somebody great for me to talk to, please. I love the introductions. And like I said, I'm excited for Zach to be here. Zach is the co-founder and CEO of Original Appearance Manufacturing, a vertically integrated e-commerce company that makes unique products for the automotive aftermarket. He's happily married and the proud father of a beautiful baby boy and two fluffy golden doodles. So that's pretty awesome. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So how old is your son?
He is 6 months on Saturday.
6 months on Saturday. That is a fun age. Are you sleeping?
I am.
Good.
Not as much last night as I wanted to, but no, he's been great. He's sleeping through the night for the most part, and just a miracle and a blessing in our lives.
That's fantastic. And two fluffy golden doodles. How old are your dogs?
Oh man, I'm a bad dog dad. Right. I don't know, 7 and 4 or something like that.
So he's got older brothers or older sisters or both.
Yep.
Older sisters. All right. Yeah. Well, I remember when our first kid was born, our dog Chica, she was definitely a second mom. You know, she was always looking out for him. So that's dogs are awesome that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big dog lover. I grew up with dogs, and we got the first one, and then we got a second one to keep her company, and now we got Mason for both of them to keep an eye on. So it's a full house.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, like I said, welcome to the show. I talked to another guy a few episodes ago, and I'm not a car guy, but John, who made the introduction, is. So I learned a lot a few episodes ago, and I'm sure I'm going to learn more about cars. But so tell me, one of the questions that I always like to ask everybody, and kind of the way that I usually start the show is, tell us about the passion or passions that you're intentionally pursuing right now.
Yeah. So, I didn't really know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But one thing that I sort of observed over lots of different jobs I had over 20 jobs before I was 25. So I experienced a lot of different industries, agriculture, customer service, quite a bit in the automotive. And I just sort of observed that I wanted something a little different. I wasn't really happy working for someone else, and I had worked for a lot of different people and a lot of great people. And
Sure.
So I'm like, maybe the problem's me, right? So
common denominator.
Right. When this opportunity came along, it sort of came along at a interesting and important period in my life, and we can maybe talk about that a little bit later. But always valued autonomy. I'm learning more lately that I really value empowerment. I was a kid that grew up with model cars and posters of cars on my wall, and I always loved vehicles. And then once I actually got vehicles, I realized how difficult they were to actually maintain and fix up. And
Sure.
All the tools and skills. And I was like, man, there just has to be an easier way to make this stuff look nice. I want it to be as easy as it was when I was building model cars as a kid. So that was kind of, I think, a lot of the motive or the passion behind it was this is the product that I wanted, as a young man first getting into vehicles. And now we've kind of been able to expand our manufacturing ability to do even cooler stuff. So that's kind of the underlying motive, right? Is always love cars. I like the idea of having autonomy and working for myself, but ultimately I want to make products for people like me, right?
Yeah.
So stuff that's affordable, it's easy to put on, but it has a big impact. And it's been fun to be able to do that.
That's awesome. Very cool. So tell us a little bit more about what your company actually does.
Yeah. So we started an auto body shop, and we had customers coming in for years with rusty vehicles. We're in Iowa, we're in the Salt Belt. Everything's rusty. And what they kept telling us was like, I don't care how you do it. I just don't want to see the rust anymore.
Okay.
Right. And so, like most body shops, we didn't love rust repair. It wasn't super profitable. A lot of times it was more expensive than the value of the vehicle to do it right. And so Sam, my boss at the time, he's been a mentor to me, my best friend's dad. I think he just approached that question with a lot more empathy and a lot more open-mindedness. It wasn't just like, well, you can do this repair or nothing. He really wanted to find a solution that matched what people wanted. Right?
Okay.
And I think that was like the generative spark for this product that became this business, was the deep empathy that he had for his customers and the willingness and belief that he actually could maybe come up with something that could match that. So we were playing around with hand-formed stainless steel panels, hoping they would not rust out as quick. And of course, that doesn't really scale in a manufacturing environment. And I had actually at the time been researching manufacturing processes for a business that I was kind of planning to start on the side. And so we kind of put those two ideas together, and it's like, well, what if we made them out of plastic? So zero experience in the plastics industry, thermoforming, all that. Like, we knew nothing.
Oh, wow.
But as his employee, I convinced him, I'm like, yeah, let's just buy one of these thermoformers. They're pretty cheap. You can afford it. Let's just try it. And it worked. And we sort of used our customers at the body shop as our guinea pigs. And we realized, like, yeah, this is actually a legitimate product and it's profitable for the body shop. And like, maybe we can make a go of this thing.
Wow. Okay. That's very cool. So, you mentioned that, you started with a mentor, Sam. Now, did you split off of that, or is that still the same organization?
Yeah. So Sam owns a body shop in Ames called Schaefer's Auto Body. He built that for 40 years.
Yeah.
And he was, super instrumental in the product Quick Covers, which eventually turned into a separate company. So we actually sort of pulled that out, started a new entity.
Gotcha.
And he ended up giving his ownership to his son, Luke Schaefer, who's one of my best buds growing up.
Nice.
And then I kind of bought into it, and then we started to build it from there.
Very cool.
Yeah, Quick Covers is the product. It's a slip-on sort of exterior panel for your truck that can kind of go over the rust and make your truck look new again for thousands less than a traditional repair.
Wow.
But then we actually turned that into a manufacturing business because we couldn't find anyone to make it for us.
Okay.
And there's some stories behind that, but that's how we actually became Original Appearance Manufacturing. Was we realized, like, hey, we're not actually just a product company, we're like a manufacturing company that happens to make products and sell them online
because nobody else does this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. So, what was the process? What did the process look like there with, kind of making that realization? Like, how long ago did that happen?
Man. So we had zero intentions of becoming a manufacturing company.
Okay.
We started with that little former that we bought as like our prototype machine, realized we wanted to make like a full one-piece product that fit the whole truck. So Sam actually built a custom thermoformer from scratch.
Of course
just
he
like
did.
He's an innovator.
These things just blow my mind.
Yeah,
I am
it's
so
insane.
not handy.
Yeah. It's wild. And like, so we used that homemade thermoformer plus the prototype that we had bought. And we were just kind of making stuff in the body shop and like cutting stuff out by hand. We didn't even have workbenches. Like, we were working on the floor. I've got videos of like just product on the floor and like we're sitting there like cross-legged,
Sure.
cutting stuff out.
Just killing your back.
Yeah, it was terrible. And so we, early on, Luke and I thought, like, let's try to find someone else to make this, right? And there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, I toured thermoforming facilities, tooling makers, engineering companies, trying to find someone that could do it for us. And so over those first 2 years, we're still making stuff in-house. And at the same time, I'm trying to find someone else to make it for us. We spent a lot of time and money, like hiring engineering firms and tooling makers and stuff. And it never worked out. Like, what we would get would actually be lower than the quality that we were making. So it was, I think, late 2019. We had a little bit of money we needed to spend for tax reasons. And we'd had all these failures with outsourcing. And that's where we kind of just made the decision, like, we just got to bring everything in house, like, and we have to do it at a higher level, right? So we can't keep doing this manual process. We need like engineering, we need CNC machines, we need bigger thermoformers. Like, it was a big step, but we were at the point where like we can't keep spending money and time on things that aren't producing any results,
Right.
because we're overwhelmed actually making the product. So let's just focus on doing that.
Oh, wow. That's great. So since you made that decision in 2009,
19.
Sorry, 2019. I even wrote down 2019. Since you made that decision, and obviously you made that right before, 2020, how, you don't have to spend a lot of time there unless it's relevant, but what's the growth look like since you made that decision?
Yeah. So our first year in business, we didn't do a whole lot. But it was okay, because I was kind of coming out of a bad place in life. I'd had some sort of mental health struggles, and like I kind of needed just to put myself in a cave, basically, and
Sure.
work in a windowless warehouse by myself and sort through some stuff. So that was okay. But 19, we really started to take off. We like 9x the business in 2019, and we're still doing everything manually then, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we made this decision. We're just going to do everything in house, and then I think we roughly tripled the business in 20. And then I think it was probably maybe 60 or 70% again in 21.
Wow. I mean, you're still just talking huge amounts of growth right now.
Yeah. And so, managing that is all difficult too.
Yeah.
We went from like 2 to 12 employees almost overnight, and then 12 to 20. And, just the HR and administrative aspect of that, on top of trying to figure out engineering and production. It's funny. I think Elon Musk has said before, like, making the thing that makes the thing is the hardest, right? So,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
building out a manufacturing plant that actually is operationally efficient and profitable, and all the capital expenditures that go into that. And then trying to build out a fun workplace culture that is efficient and works for people. You're doing all that while you're also trying to market and grow the business and make new products. So it was a tough couple of years, but we're kind of just starting to hit our stride now.
That's awesome. And how's 2022 looking so far?
2022, we're kind of roughly flat over 21, which relative to the e-commerce industry is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Most e-commerce stores are down. So we're doing okay there. We do have some new products coming out this year, and a couple of partnerships that we're announcing later. So I think we'll actually see a little bit of growth over last year.
Yeah.
But there's two ways to grow in a business, right? Top line and bottom line.
Yep.
And so all these investments that we've been making into this digital production system, we call it our 2.0 system, is kind of starting to pay off. So we're starting to see some of that bottom line growth too.
Well, you look at what the numbers you just talked about, the years of growth before that, and I would say a flat year is going to be expected every now and again, but that's incredible. So you mentioned, and maybe you said something about that just a minute ago, but you mentioned it was coming from an interesting time in your life. Wondering if you'd be willing to unpack that a little bit. Where that was or what that was.
Yeah. How deep do you get on this podcast?
Hey man, I ask the questions and we go from there.
Yeah. So at one point in the summer of 2017, I drove out to the tallest bridge in the county with what I thought was my last meal in my belly.
Yeah.
And I've just been dealing with, some mental health stuff, and my career wasn't going where I wanted it to. And I wasn't aware or appreciative of all the blessings I did have in my life, and just a lot of resentment and anger and frustration, and sort of came to a culmination at that time. And that's basically when I realized, like, if I am going to be here on this planet, if I'm stuck with a life sentence, then I've got to have a life that I don't hate, right? And luckily enough, this quick covers thing was kind of in really early stages, and it was just starting to like take off a little bit, to the point where in 2018 I was able to just quit my full-time job and start doing this full-time. And I mean, looking back, that's divine intervention, right? Like, that's just a blessing from God, because I desperately needed something, and it was right there.
That's amazing. Interestingly enough, in my just a couple episodes back, I did three episodes in a row on mental health, just because of experiences in my life and the people around me. There's just a lot, and it's something that gets overlooked, I think. So I appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable and share that. One thing that you said, you just weren't aware of the blessings in your life. I think that's something that we all do to varying levels. Most of us here in the United States, just in general, are super blessed, even though we can always find somebody that's, and I'm doing air quotes right now, folks, is more blessed than us, right? Because a lot of times we assign that to material things, right? Where I'm going with that is there something that you do in your life now to make sure that you're keeping yourself aware of those blessings?
Probably not as like formally as maybe some people would like, but one thing is I have started to find a network of other guys that have similar values. And meeting with them monthly and just reminding ourselves of like, what is the source of everything? Where does this all come from? Any blessings we do have are entrusted to us by a higher authority, and we need to be good stewards of that. And so surrounding yourself with people with good values, I think, has been important. And I don't know, it's a little bit of a paradigm shift, I guess. When I went through all that, my wife's amazing, by the way. Like she's beautiful and intelligent and loyal and awesome. And entrepreneurs get a lot of praise and attention, but like if there's a spouse behind that actually stuck around through all that,
come on,
they deserve at least half the credit.
Yep.
Right? Like,
yep.
And her showing me unconditional love throughout all of that and just being fiercely loyal. It's difficult not to get a little bit of emotional thinking about it, because what she showed me through that was like, I'll never forget it. Like
that's
she
incredible.
bought a lifetime of gratitude from me for seeing me through that. So
that's awesome.
It's hard to forget. I don't have to remind myself very often.
Yep. Yeah. That, I love the gratitude there for your bride. That's amazing. So I'm going to go back in time, even a little further. Tell us about your dreams as a kid. What did you want to be? If you can think, I love this question, but like, what did you want to be when you were 7, or what did you want to be when you're 10? One of those spots in life where they had you fill out that thing in elementary school. Do you remember any of those?
I love that you asked this question, because as a new parent, and as a guy who's thought about just my internal, existence a lot more over the last few years with some of the stuff I've gone through, I've gained a much greater appreciation for childhood, and especially the childhood I had. And I think childhood is one of those times, and I think maybe for many people, it's the only time that you really get the opportunity to, free from all other distraction, kind of just play and experiment and figure out who you are and find your spark. And boy, if you don't get a chance to do that in childhood, it's really difficult to have the opportunity and the time to do that later in life.
Yep.
So as a kid, one of the things my parents did really well was they gave us a lot of freedom, and not a whole lot of expectations. Like they weren't trying to live vicariously through us or force us down a certain path. And so, I spent a lot of my childhood looking back. It's like, it was just playing, but play is an interesting mechanism to discover yourself and just a lot about the world, right? And so I didn't have a whole lot of, I didn't think about a career as a kid. Like, I didn't say I wanted to be anything when I grew up. I didn't remember that, at least, but it was interesting because a few years ago, my mom mentioned, she's like, yeah, you did say when you were a kid, like when you grew up, you wanted to be like a car designer. Like
oh, really?
That was the only thing that you ever really said you wanted to do. And I spent a lot of time drawing as a kid. I would draw cars and really enjoyed like creative pursuits. Like I said, like building models, building with Legos, and riding bikes and adventurous stuff like that too. But I forgot that for a lot of years.
Sure.
I went to college because everyone said go to college. I worked in all these different fields to try to just make more money. That was the only focus, right? And it wasn't until just a few years ago that I was like, yeah, you know what? Like I do love cars and I love creativity and design, and wow, like now I'm in a position where I can kind of do something with all of that.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy how that like full circle thing comes around. And I'm blessed enough that I had a childhood where I could explore all those different interests and passions. So I had something to anchor to later in life when I was trying to like rediscover that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. You mentioned something that I think is super poignant. I mean, lots of what you just said there is, but one in particular is the kind of that chasing the money, right? And I think it's super easy to do, here where we live, not particularly Iowa, but again, kind of referencing our, the US in general, because there's always somebody that has more, right? And I think we can get real focused on the materialistic side of things, and we lose sight of what we love, and what we're supposed to be going after. When I was deciding to start this podcast, I read an article, and I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on it, but the guy, his contention was, telling college kids to pursue their passion is horrible advice. And I get where he was coming from, because if at 22 with, $60,000 worth of student loans, you're all of a sudden just going to go after what you love, that's probably not a good financial choice. But I also like the fact that you mentioned, your parents gave you the freedom to explore. They gave you the freedom to play. They didn't have a lot of expectations for you. I think that there's, if we give our kids the opportunity to do that, it gives them that internal drive to dream, and if we can guide them that money isn't the end all be all, hopefully they can pursue something that's going to give them life, and at the same time earn a good living. One of the things that I talk about a lot, here on the show, but also in my, when I'm writing blogs is, hey, sometimes, in fact, a lot of times things don't play out in the order that they did for you. Sometimes it's a little bit more like me with a few more years of experience, and still maybe that passion is on the side. You're doing a job. I don't hate my job by any means, but I'm doing a job that's not necessarily where my full passion lies. And so I think there's different roads that you take, but I love that you said that, because I think too many times we get it in our head that we have to earn X, so that we can buy Y, and too much of our time and our energy is focused on that.
Yeah. And I think, it's really easy to sort of bifurcate passion into like, oh, you did that as an entrepreneurial venture, like that's legit, versus like you're doing it on the side and that's not. And like, that's just a societal boundary that we draw.
Bingo.
That's like totally meaningless, right?
Yeah.
If you have something in you that's like very unique and that's your thing and that's what you feel called and drawn to do, the way that you do that doesn't matter. What matters is that you do it and that you approach it with the seriousness and sincerity that you were meant to, right? And how that plays out is how it plays out. But whether that's a business or a hobby, like in either case, it's not the way that you do it that matters as much, at least from like the business standpoint. It's like, what's the way that you're doing it inside your own head, inside your own heart, right? Like, is this something that is part of who you are and you're bringing it to the world in the way that you can? To me, like that should be the standard, not whether or not it's a business or your full-time income.
Yep, absolutely. If you're taking notes and you didn't just write that down, go ahead and hit the rewind button. Okay, so there's, that I just showed my age there. There's no rewind button. The 10-second back button, you need to go back and write that one down. That's a golden nugget right there. Awesome. All right. So, little switch of gears here, but what has been your biggest success, or what are you the most proud of?
I'm pretty hard on myself. It's, boy, that's actually a tough question. I think from a business standpoint, getting to this 2.0 production model where we're actually doing everything in-house and we're starting to see that pay off has been a long time coming. I grossly underestimated how long that would take. I thought maybe it would take a year. We'll probably be there by the end of this year, which is, 3 years. So that's been a big investment. It was a big risk. We've got some incredibly talented engineers and people that work for us that have made that possible. But yeah, building a manufacturing company from scratch that actually works and can scale is not something I planned on doing. but it seems as if we're doing that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's absolutely something to be proud of. Hearing you say those exact words, because I've sold, products. Now I'm in financial services, but like you just said, building a manufacturing company from the ground up, my brain immediately goes to the first time that I toured the Pella Windows facility and just the sheer, obviously you're not quite to that level
Not
yet,
even close.
right. I know, but that's immediately where my brain goes. It's like, yeah, I mean, you think about where they started 100 years, 125, whatever it is years ago. I mean, everybody starts somewhere. It'll be exciting to see how the growth continues, for you guys and what that looks like. Is that now, I mean, my brain's just going in a little bit different direction. We'll kind of jump back to that. But, are you guys to the point where there are, competitors or people in the same field that are starting to knock on your door with interest, or is that not part of the story yet? Or are you not allowed to talk about that?
Well, there's one that I can't talk about for sure. So
right.
it was pretty interesting because I think 3 or 4 months into like actually launching the product and trying to make a business out of it, we got just like a cold email from the CEO of a large automotive aftermarket parts manufacturer. And he's like, hey, like, I'm interested. I'd like to learn more. And we were like super excited. We're like 4 months in, we're like, oh, we're going to be rich. They're going to buy us out immediately. Like, we're done. Like,
we did it already.
And that conversation didn't really go anywhere right away. And then a couple years later, we met him at a trade show and he's like, yeah, we're keeping an eye on you guys. We're watching you. And so that hasn't turned into anything yet.
Sure.
And we have had some other people sort of like cold outreach to us and, who knows where that'll go, but
yeah,
it is kind of cool to
bet.
Know that you're being seen by some of the bigger players.
Yeah. That's awesome. Definitely awesome. Flip that on its head. What's the biggest setback or struggle that you've faced, and how did you overcome it?
I mean, in the business context, it was that transition of going from not wanting to be a manufacturing company and spending a bunch of time and money doing that to doubling down and getting into that stage. I mean, there was a point in late 2019, we had got back from a trade show. We still hadn't quite made this decision whether or not we were going to like do everything in house and be a manufacturer. And we had like negative $200 in our checking account.
Yeah.
Right. And I'd worked for more than full time. I mean, 120 hour weeks for 2 years.
Wow.
Not every week, but
sure.
There was a lot of those weeks.
Yeah.
And hadn't paid myself anything. My life savings is in it. I'm up to my eyeballs in credit card debt. Like Dave Ramsey wouldn't approve for sure.
Right, yeah,
but,
right.
I mean, that was a tough moment. It's like, man, we've been doing this for 2 years. I've got everything in this and there's no money. And my business partner and I just looked at each other and we're like, I guess we just keep going till the bank calls.
Double down.
And it's interesting, with the way the markets are right now, and especially in the e-commerce world, I'm starting to see more about this idea of like persistence becoming popular again.
Right.
And my partner Luke is a pretty deep guy, and he's been thinking about this a lot lately too. And he's actually out of the business now, but we still talk. And he's kind of come to a similar conclusion that like maybe there's something like virtue in persistence and just going through. And it's not from like this over aggrandized idea of like stoicism or like that you have to suffer to do well, but it's just this idea of like just keep going,
just keep going,
keep walking, until you can't. And it's surprising how far that can take you.
Right. Well, I think it's a Martin Luther King Jr. quote, but it's if you if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. That I know it's bigger than that, but that's immediately popped into my head. And another piece, because I like to just share stuff from my experience too, that I think persistence is one of those things too. And I love that you use the word virtue, but that's really something that I want to try to pass to my kids as well. Because, and I had wonderful parents. My dad unfortunately passed away fairly young, so he's not with us anymore. My mom is incredible. She's an amazing grandma and continues to be a great mom. But the thing that and I've said this to her, so, if it gets back to her, I'm not worried about it. But the thing that I want to do a better job of is pushing, but not be that crazy parent. You know what I'm, you know who I'm talking, those people that I'm talking about. But like, I should have been a straight A student. Like I should have. School was easy for me. But I didn't have to put work in and could still get B pluses and A minuses. I want to try to recognize those things about my kids and be like, hey, it's not like you're going to get punished if you don't get an A, but you should get an A because, or whatever that is. Like, hey, you're batting 300. If you went to the batting cage once a week, you could probably be batting 400, whatever that is. Finding that thing, not that's important to me, but it's important to them, and teaching them that with hard work, good can become great. Or heck, if it's important to them and they're horrible at it, bad can become okay. Whatever that step is. So I love that you brought up persistence, because I think it is something that has almost been lost. But I will tell you, every person that's sitting in that chair across from me, maybe that exact word hasn't come up, but I've heard it. Like that has almost always been the key to their success, is they didn't give up when things got hard. So I love that you shared that.
Yeah. And I think it's a fine line, to your point about sort of meeting your potential. It's, in my opinion and experience, it's not about the grade or the outcome, right? It's about accessing and achieving that potential as an end in itself, right? Like
that's a great point.
There's value in doing that.
Yeah.
And that should be the motivator, is like, how good can I be? Without getting into like the numbers,
grades
and
or batting average.
Right.
Yes. Thank you for that. I agree with that 100%.
That's how we measure it in society, right?
Unfortunately.
But that's not actually the goal. The goal is
it's a process.
Yes.
Yeah. And that also brings up the whole, for me, that brings up the whole fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And that's something that I in particular see with my daughter. She's very smart, and I love that. But she also, if she doesn't get something right away, she gets mad and wants to give up on it. And I know that's that thing that's, I'm trying to work on with her, is like, hey, when it's hard, that's where we need to dig in. Like, that's where we work a little bit harder. And yeah, it's frustrating, but don't let it defeat you. That's one of the things that I'm really working on with her.
Yeah. And that's, maybe it's funny because my wife and I are at different ends of the spectrum too, right? Like, she's super intelligent, like has almost never failed at anything in her life. And like, and I always joke around, I'm like, well, I'm on the opposite of the spectrum. Like, I've failed so many times, and like, it's just, it can be frustrating at times.
Sure.
But sometimes if you find yourself in those situations, you're just kind of forced to persist and forced to explore that stuff a little more. And it can be a blessing in disguise.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So what's a dream or a goal that you haven't reached yet?
Man, that's, for a lot of, the early stage of the business, it was a numbers game, right?
Right.
And I was always wrong, right? I'm like, oh, when we get to $500,000 in revenue, I'll be rich. Oh, when we get to $1.5 million, I'll be rich. Oh, when we get to $2 million, it's like, you just keep spending money. It's a capital intensive business.
Right.
It's like, I don't know if there's a number where it makes sense, but, one thing I have been thinking about a lot lately, having our son, and that changes your perspective on things a little
Big
bit.
Time.
So right now, and this might be different a year from now, but right now what I'm focusing on more is, I do want to get to a spot where I can, feel like I have maybe a little more security, which is probably not a great thing to say as an entrepreneur of a growing business, but, to lock in some of that for my son and for my family.
Sure.
And my priorities are changing a little bit. 120-hour weeks in 2019 was not a big deal. It probably was to my wife, but I wasn't very empathetic to that back then. I don't want to do that anymore.
No.
So that's sort of where my focus is going, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I want to be able to take care of my family, put them in a spot where they're good, and have more time and energy to focus on them.
Yep.
I still love the business. It's a huge part of my identity, probably more than it should be, but it's changed a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. Kids definitely do that. I think back to My son will be 11 in August, and I just think about the shift, especially for me spiritually, when my son was born, because I had such a great dad. I was just like, I got to do this better. I got to be a better person than I am right now if I'm going to teach him to be the kind of man that I hope he grows up to be.
Right.
So,
yep. And that's same.
Yeah.
Had the same thought,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I can say whatever I want, but ultimately I want to be able to be the values that I want him to see.
Yeah.
I don't want to just say it.
Yep.
Yeah,
for sure. So what would you say to somebody who is struggling to find their passion, and maybe you have something for both, or someone who's struggling to get their passion off the ground, like, hey, they've identified it, but they feel like they're stuck in the mud.
If you don't know what it is, there's a lot of internal work that has to get done. And how you do that is up to you. And it probably needs to be a one-of-one process, right? I think it's easy to conflate passion with excitement, or passion with I don't know, inspiration. They
Sure.
say inspiration's perishable.
Yeah.
Passion's not, so it's something very different. But in our culture, we seem to conflate all of that. So, I go back to the child. It's like, you got to be willing to do some deep personal work.
Yeah.
Go back to your childhood if you were lucky enough to have one where you could kind of discover part of that. If you weren't, then you got to do that work now. And it's not a prescription. I'm not saying you have to do that, but if that's on your heart, then that's where your time and attention will go.
Mm-hmm.
If you do know what it is, and I think the what is harder to define than most people think, right? Like my what is not running a manufacturing company, right? It's being able to have the autonomy and do a lot of creative and design work and do that sort of in the automotive space. And this just happens to be the way that worked out. So I would just probably encourage someone to not focus on defining the what as a career, an established career that like people recognize, but more around the experience of like, what would it feel like, and is there a way to create something that can foster that? Man, I'm not an expert, and I'm also not a huge believer in like trying to like give people prescriptive ways to do things.
Sure.
So, I don't know if that helps or not.
No, I think that's a great answer. And actually something you said reminded me of something that I wanted to come back to earlier in our conversation, because you said you value autonomy. Earlier, you said you value empowerment. I'm assuming you yourself value empowerment, but what that made me think of, especially now that I know that you've grown to, to 20 or 20 plus employees, how does the fact that you value empowerment, how does that affect the way that you lead? And do you see that you're trying to foster that in your employees as well?
Yeah. This is another one of those things where it's, this just happens to be how it works for us.
Sure.
I'm not saying that this is a how-to.
Right.
But I think because I value that so much, that's just how it sort of plays out in our culture.
Good.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not a micromanager at all. I often tell my fellow coworkers and employees that like, dude, I'm aware that I'm not like even a good manager. Like, but maybe I don't give myself enough credit, right? Because when you hire talented people and you let them and trust them do work in the way that is most fruitful for them, even though that might be different from person to person, it's a lot easier, man. Like I said, I've worked at a lot of companies where we would sit down every other week or every 2 months and try to rearrange our incentive strategies and rules, and just trying to essentially get people to comply. And that's a never ending game, man.
Right.
It's like, it's a hamster wheel. And we've been really lucky that we've just got really talented folks. And for the most part, I stay out of their way. And lately, I spend almost zero time like actively managing people. And I'm actually trying to figure out how to keep them busy because they're so good.
That's awesome. It's a good problem.
Like I said, I don't feel like I can take a lot of credit for that, but that probably is an outcome of what I value and just giving them that same level of autonomy.
Yeah, that's great. Very good. Do you are you a reader? Do you like to read books?
I spent a lot of time reading in my 20s and into early 30s. Lately, I do more like audiobooks.
Yeah. Same.
But yeah, I spent most of my mid 20s basically learning everything I could about personal finance, and that's kind of part of the reason I came to the conclusion that, like, man, if I do want to get ahead in life, it's probably not going to be working for someone else.
Right.
And I think that's part of what sort of gave me enough motivation to do an entrepreneurial endeavor. And more recently, the last couple of years, it's, I kind of went through some stuff spiritually and wasn't sure if I liked the, let's call it retail religion that I had. And so a lot of philosophy and religious stuff in the last few years. And then I'm a little bit of a nerd. Like I read above my intelligence level a lot. So like
good for you.
Physics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I also like a good sci-fi book.
Yeah.
That's also fun. I usually do that once or twice a year.
That's good. You gotta work the fiction in there too. So I feel like I ask this question in the most wandering way possible. I probably give too many options to answer, and then I convolute it more than I should. But really, what I want to get to is like 3 favorite books. But you can switch that to 3 most impactful, or the 3 you read most recently.
Yeah. Favorites kind of depend on the season, right? Like every once in a while, you'll just find a book that really speaks to you.
I think that's why I end up like changing the way I ask that question.
So what I will say is, I've read a lot of good books. I've read a lot of bad books. I would say 80 to 90% of stuff in like the business and self-help world is
garbage,
junk, and
it
could be 2 paragraphs long and it'd be fine.
I feel like they rewrite, like authors who have numerous books have the same idea and just rewrite the same book, on different occasions. So really, go ahead.
I did just think of one. So, and this is, I want to be careful about how I say it. So, one of those authors that writes a lot of books is Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
And he has a book, Outliers, that I read, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yep.
And while my perspective on Gladwell as an author has changed a little bit as of late.
Fair enough.
What was really interesting to me is the way that I interpreted that book, and the way that most people that I've talked to have read it, interpreted it, was basically, it was almost an apologetic for like not being amazing, right? It's like all these successful people, they were outliers. They had all these situations, whether they were born into the right family or had access to the right technology at the right time, or they went to the right school. And it was basically, if you read it at face value, an excuse for why some people are more successful than you. That's how a lot of people interpret it.
Yeah.
What I remember is when I closed the back cover of the book, the first thought I had in my head was, what's my outlier environment?
Find your outlier environment.
Right. And that has actually been really important and instrumental in the way that I build a perspective around my own life.
That's huge. I love that.
People sometimes talk about like reverse engineering your path. And I did that. Like I sat down and I'm like, okay, if I was going to write a book about myself, my successful version, my outlier version of myself, all the chapters up until now are already written. How would that narrative flow into something more successful down the road? And the interesting way to do that is like, just look at the opportunities and skill sets that you have and own them as like a superpower, instead of being something that like you're either ashamed is a weird word. I struggled with that for a while, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't, I know that I've got opportunities and things that maybe a lot of other people in different situations don't have.
Right.
But if you can get past that, just be like, no, that's my thing. Like that's someday when I'm successful, people are going to be like, oh, well, that's why. It's like, well, figure out what that is.
Yep.
Own that and sort of scale it. So I don't know. It was that was a book where I seemed to come to a different conclusion than most other people who've read it. But I think it's a powerful framework.
Yeah. That actually makes me kind of bump that one up. I know it's on my list, and hearing you say that, I'm like, yeah, that is unique perspective. That's awesome. So one of the things that I always like to ask people is, where can listeners find out more about you, or get in touch with you if they have questions? Website, email. What's the best way for them to find out more?
Yeah, I'm probably most active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Just Zach Kowalik, and I tend to give marketers a hard time, and I rant about crypto more than I should. But there's some business stuff in there too. My email is Zach, ZACH at oamusa.com.
Okay.
Feel free to reach out to me there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Zach, I really appreciate you coming on the show. This has been a great conversation. I just love that. I love your honesty, and you're willing to talk about the why behind the business. That's the most valuable to people, other people who are out there pursuing it. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for being along on this ride, fellow passion pursuers. I'm going to put a little plug in. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, please do that. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Zach was a recommendation from one of the listeners. So please share this show with the people that you like and love, and the people that that are out there pursuing their passions as well. Until next time, get after it.
If you have questions or would like to contact us, please check out the show details for contact information. Thanks for listening to the Pursue Your Passion podcast.